Aloha, Ezra Tuaolo here, aka Mr. Aloha and Executive Director for Hate is Wrong. I want to thank you and welcome all of you to the second annual Hate is Wrong Super Bowl Inclusion Panel, sponsored by the Minnesota Vikings and the NFL Foundation. As we move into the future, we need to keep those discussions of equality, inclusion, and diversity alive. We need to educate, we need to discuss, we need to learn, and we all need to heal. So thank you again for joining us. I was thinking we can get rid of all the serious stuff tonight because tomorrow we are going to be partying with a purpose. We're going to be raising money for anti-bullying programs at the Hate is Wrong Super Bowl Inclusion Party, 7 p.m. Central. So make sure you are there. All right, without further ado, I want to introduce your moderator of this evening. He is a very good friend of mine. He's also the founder of Outsports.com, also the co-author of My Life on the Line, a memoir of a good friend of ours, Ryan O'Callahan. So everyone, please help me welcome Sid Ziegler.
Inclusion panel. Ezra, thank you so much for the introduction. It's been awesome working with you and Hate is Wrong over the last few years to bring these kinds of conversations to the Super Bowl in particular. Obviously, you have a history with the Super Bowl, and even though we all cannot be together this year in Tampa Bay, it's really great to see that you're able to bring this conversation to an audience and a wider audience than we may have otherwise had. Again, I'm Sid Ziegler, and we've divided these conversations into two to hit on different topics, specific topics in and around LGBTQ inclusion in sports. The first one, because of course the Super Bowl, the big game, is in 2 days. We're going to focus on men's sports in particular. Men's sports and women's sports, there are similar issues, but there are a lot of different issues. And we want to really focus the next 45 minutes or so on men's sports and what LGBTQ inclusion looks like. If you do have a question for any of the panelists, you can absolutely ask it, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. You can just type your question into the comments. It will come back to me, and we will try to get as many of those answered as possible. We've got an amazing group of people. It's incredible, the people that Ezra is able to pull together for these conversations. Ezra is joining us from beautiful, sunny, warm Minneapolis. Ezra is the executive director of Hate is Wrong and played for a bunch of NFL teams, including Minnesota. Ezra, you headed to the pool after this?
No, I'm not.
We've got Tony Richardson, who also played for the Vikings for a stint, but is most known for his time with the Kansas City Chiefs, where he was just an absolute superstar. He's now with the NFL Legends community. Ann Doepner is the Director of Inclusion and Employee Investment with the Minnesota Vikings. Lots of Vikings connections here. And finally, Billy Beane, who is a former Major League Baseball player, the first formerly, or second formerly Major League Baseball player to come out publicly. First or second, Billy? I can't even keep track of who came first.
I'm definitely the second.
Second, after Glenn.
Glenn Burke was the first.
Glenn Burke was the first. Billy Beane is the second. He is now the first Major League Baseball vice president for social responsibility and inclusion. He was an ambassador for inclusion for the commissioner for a stint, but now he is a vice president, social responsibility and inclusion. And Billy, I want to start with you because you have the unique position of having been in the locker rooms as a player. And one of the interesting things that you've done is you are going back into the locker rooms as a Major League Baseball executive. And I'm curious, of course, you were closeted as a player, you're out now, but have the conversations about inclusion and has the language in and around the locker room changed in those 30 years?
The answer to that is yes. For Tony or Sarah or myself, our generation, there was a completely different culture that existed at that time. And it's ironic that I left baseball under, where I was really struggling, hiding my secret from my family. I grew up in a strict military household, the oldest of 5 boys, and I was in the big leagues very young. And it took me a long time to come to terms with my sexual orientation. And that struggle really was a narrative for my personality. And so I was never confronted with, or confronted anyone else when I heard, my manager call somebody a faggot, or the way that word was thrown around the same way guys were sexist at, every opportunity towards women reporters. It was just, there was less traffic through clubhouses in those days. And now as baseball has grown, and since I've been back since 2014, and like I said before, the irony that I was brought back for the exact same reason why I left it, and baseball really entrusting me with an opportunity to build that job out, because there was really no precedent. Glenn was not out as a player. His story came out just after his career ended. Few people knew about him while he was playing, and a lot of people may say that contributed to his early exit to baseball. But there's just, with no representation, no images in the media that were positive about LGBTQ people, it was easy to perpetuate those stereotypes and that type of the way men have bias towards others, discriminate against each other, or just want to insult each other, was always to feminize each other. And when I played, umpires used to call other players names. They used to call umpires other names. That word, the F word flew around in the clubhouse. It was common as any other word. And now, because of great leadership, starting with the owners, and I was really aggressive about it having to start there first, and them being a part of the process. The way the clubhouse rolls now, and my visibility before COVID, and guys coming up to me saying, if I have a teammate who's ready to come out, man, I'm ready to support him. I just want him to be, one of the guys and a great teammate. And we've had players come to the forefront, unsolicited, to share positive comments via social media when we've had gay slurs on the field, or unfortunately in the radio booth this past summer. So, it's a process, Sid. It's every day. It's getting from today to tomorrow, and not saying, look, we did really great last year, so let's just close the books and be really proud of ourselves, or pat ourselves on the back. Yeah. The scale of baseball is big, and the changeover is big. So there's always going to be a human element, but we really, really have a solid foundation from which to build from right now.
So go ahead.
No, and that's why I wanted Billy to be on this conversation, just the work that he's doing with MLB. And it's something that, as far as with the NFL is doing a fantastic job with the community, right? The outreach to the LGBTQ community and stuff. So when I had a meeting with Goodell, with Ryan O'Callahan, I believe it was about a year and a half ago, and we had these conversations that we're talking. It's one of those things that I want to sort of get where Billy is, where so we can sort of kind of get in there, not on the community side of it, but inside of it, right? To sort of kind of educate the players. And it's not going to be easy, right? Just like Billy was just saying, it's not going to be easy. But if you don't start somewhere, if you don't start with the owners to educate them or talk to them about, inclusion and diversity, it's nothing's going to change, right? And so we had that conversation with Goodell, and the thing about it was, yes, they're doing a fantastic job, and he was sort of kind of wondering why we haven't sort of moved past that into sort of the locker rooms, per se, right, and all of that. So while I don't know that answer. That's why I brought Billy here. So maybe he can sort of kind of help us so we can sort of like, come up with the plan. We can work for learn from each other and move forward with all of this, right? So.
Yeah, Israel, that's something that's interesting you say, and obviously we've spoke and been on the same panels and go into the communities and talk to young people. But Billy, I think you made a great point, because the key word that you said was culture and creating a culture change. And I think for me, I think like you said, it has to be something that you can't say, okay, we addressed the situation in 2020, but we should be okay for 2021. I think as you talk to the players about coming into the game, their career while the game, their post-career, it should be those same conversation about how do you treat your, fellow coworkers, female, male, different backgrounds. So that key word, when you said culture change, that to me is what you literally have to do, is create the culture, create an environment to where, you hear the stories and obviously I, know Ryan and spent some time with Ryan, and hearing his story of saying like, man, the day I knew that football was going to be over, the day I was thinking about I'm probably going to have to end my life. And that shouldn't have, no one should have to go through that just because of how they, choose to live their lives and their sexual orientation. So I think the key word there was, culture change, because it's something that, when I came into the league in '94, same thing, those words were being said, and along with a lot of other words that would kind of discriminate people on race. And that it slowly started to change as I got out of the league in 2010. I hadn't been in the locker room since then. But I definitely agree with you when you say those things cannot exist on no level. So that's a great when you talk about culture change.
Your comment, Tony, about Ryan is really on point as well, because it goes to the point where every athlete wants to be accepted by his peers in that locker room, in that clubhouse, doesn't matter what anybody says. The most important, you want to feel like your brothers and sisters believe that you belong in that clubhouse. And so if you're hearing them consistently say negative things about a part of you, my self-esteem from 1987 to 1996 as a gay man did not even begin on the barometer yet. Like I didn't have any friends like Esera or Sid, who I've known for 20 plus years, both of them, to validate any part of me. You know what I mean? It was just like I didn't even know anybody that I could reach out. Sadly, there was no, there was no internet life in those days, or anywhere that you could even have a conversation with somebody that just you thought might think the same way. You had to go out and find that place. So I think that's where it starts. And when we start talking about, our athletes going to move forward with that decision, the consistency there, there's a lot at stake for athletes when it comes to their time as a player. And it's become more, in my opinion, more of a business decision than it is an emotional decision. And we'll get into that probably a little bit later.
So you guys talk about culture change, and I'm curious about, and you mentioned some things, sharing stories and changing the language. And I'm curious about what is the most important culture for us to change. What I mean by that is we hear all the time, and I hear it out sports, oh, well, there are, why are there no out men in major pro sports? What's the NFL doing to change NFL culture? And I tell them, you know how many players there are in the NFL? About 2,000, 2,100 active players at any given time. Some are on teams, some aren't. You know how many high school athletes there are? There are millions. And I'm curious, Ann, in the Vikings front office, when you look at the social change that you all are trying to advance, are you more focused on changing your own locker room of 53 players, or are you looking at changing the culture of the entire city and state of Minneapolis and Minnesota?
Yeah, well, you hit on it right there, Sid. I mean, the NFL is a microcosm of the rest of society. And we take it seriously that we have a platform from which we can work and create visibility at an amazing level. So we need to do the work, obviously, internally. We want a locker room where everyone can experience psychological safety, where they're not going through, what Billy did over those years and struggling mentally, not feeling validated. When you said the word validation, Billy, like that jumped out at me. Everyone deserves to be validated for for who and how they are as a full person. And so that's our goal, is to create that locker room that brings that validation for everyone, and also our front office. We have one employee on staff who is an out gay employee. I mean, surely we have more that are not out. And so a lot of my work that I've been doing is how can we have conversations internally, even with our staff, to just start talking about this. Language matters a lot. How can we educate everyone around how their words, whether they know it or not, could be damaging? And one of the really most pivotal moments we've had, I think, on this topic is this past summer over Pride Month. We held what we called an Ask Me Anything, and it was an internal event where we had 3 staff members come on, and one was a staff member who has a child who is transitioning genders, and she had not previously shared this in any way at work, maybe here or there with her closest friends, as something that she's going through as a mother and trying to support her child through this. But she got on a meeting just like this, and she shared her story, and she was vulnerable. And the outpouring of support that she received after that, both publicly on the call and afterwards in follow-ups, I mean, she said she's never felt more validated. I mean, that was the word that landed with her. So I think we're starting to do the work, like we've talked about, it is one day at a time. You can get overwhelmed if you look at how much progress there still is to be made, but we can make a change one person at a time, little by little, by allowing people to share their stories. I think is a big piece.
I think that's a great example of where a lot of people, and especially in our own community, have been just waiting for one athlete, male or female, or whatever a gender expression or narrative they have to their best self, waiting for that one athlete to carry the whole conversation. And the messaging, it's a great point, Sid, that you brought up about the scale, the number of athletes. Baseball's half the size, if even that, of the NFL, and the NBA is even half the size of MLB. And so the athletes that are active athletes, it is a very small percentage of society, but the impact and influence that we have. When I was a player, every message, every image of a woman on the scoreboard was a sexualization of that woman. They either had to be in short shorts, a skirt, or, tight shirt and running across the field, whatever. There was no concern for respect for each other. And we all know what a person of color has been how they've been persecuted over the last 100 years in sports. There's just no way to even quantify how difficult that has been for our athletes of color. And then without representation in the LGBTQ community, or no dialogue, because the one thing that our community can do is suppress the truth. As different from someone whose gender expression is female or a person of color, that is something, and I think that has kept us internalizing the truth for so long, because it is where our true self is not a choice, but it is a choice to tell the world about it. And so your example, Anne, about the office creating a safe space for someone who may have worked there for many years to come forward. This was the exact environment that I walked into at the commissioner's office. We had no out employees at the office of the commissioner in 2014. And then, one by one, people would come to me in private conversations and say, I'm so happy MLB hired you. You're the first person that I've been able to talk to comfortably. And then we started employee resource groups, and you create a broader platform where people see positive. And now it's just amazing how many more people have started to make that choice. And it's grown, and so are all sports teams are growing, and we're getting younger in the front offices, and there's going to be people that have, living their truth much more comfortably than people from my generation.
But I also have to add this, Billy, you played the game, right? You played baseball, so you knew how it felt to be in the closet, like myself, right? We know how back in the days and stuff, but you played the game. So do you feel that it's a little bit more respected, like a player coming back to sort of start these conversations or else, or what do you feel, or an ally, or how do you?
I think there's no more effective messenger to our players than former players. And Tony, I would ask you to give us your opinion on that. When we're talking about social justice, you need to see somebody who's lived the life experience, who knows how hard it is to get, like you and Esera do, to get in that NFL clubhouse, to play in a Super Bowl. They need to see a peer, and it's not an indictment against, you know, people in the professional space that are DEI specialists. It's just something about the kindred brother and sisterhood of people who have done the hard yards, the blood, sweat, and tears, and know how hard it is to be, you know, quantified specifically by your athletic ability. You know, there's just like a punishment, you know, as you, and, you know, and so many of our great athletes take up so much of the bandwidth of attention that it's easy for the world sports fans to think that every athlete has a safe, perfect, multi-million-dollar career in front of them. Most of us are hanging on for dear life. And so there's a lot that goes into those decisions. And that's why I think we see such joyous confidence at the scholastic and NCAA level of athletes that do come out, because they're just doing it for the love of competition, and they're around people that, you know, that they see images of themselves. And we just have to continue to make that culture positive. And I agree, Esera, that the NFL should have you in that clubhouse. They need to see somebody who has lived the journey to talk, and someone that they can respect equally for your professional life and the sacrifices you made in front of all of that personal journey to be one of the best football players in the world.
Yeah, Billy, you made a great point there, because, you know, you talk about race, and obviously as we, you know, approach the Super Bowl here this weekend, and we look at the disparity of African-American minority coaches and their hires. So that's what and that's exactly what you're talking about, because once we start saying that, okay, all the doors of every organization should be open to anyone, whether it's your sexual orientation, whether it's the color of your skin, or anything like that. So I do agree from the NFL, from our sport, that all the doors, obviously we're starting to see more, you know, female coaches, which I applaud that, but you definitely have to open the doors. And so it would be interesting to see when we do get a chance to talk to the commissioner, because I know Roger is, you know, every NFL city we go to, whether if it's draft or combine, we go in and we talk to the LGBTQ youth that are in that environment. We don't go and talk to high school kids and automatically start talking about that culture change. And that's where I think you have to, you know, as you said, and it's like, you have to go out and you really got to get this message out. You know, me living in New York, you know, I have a lot of friends in that community, and it's just, you know, just they're my friends, and I can, you know, I don't really have a problem with that. But I think in some of the other cities in the South and different things like that, it's kind of like, okay, well, we just need to keep that in that small box, and we can't continue to live our lives like that. And I do agree that you have to start opening the doors and say it's for women, men, sexual orientation, white, black, and, you know, until we start knocking down some of those doors, it'd be very difficult to create change.
So we talk about the power of voices and power of communicating, you know, a football player communicating to a football player.
Yep.
A player completely communicating to a black player is more powerful when we hear from people like us. And one of my frustrations every year is when the NFL has its My Cause, My Cleats weekend, 1,000 players have a cause on their cleats. And for the 5th straight year, not a single one addresses LGBTQ issues.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I want to hear from Ann about this, like how to engage, how they engage players on this stuff. And then I want to hear from you, Tony, because you started to address it. And how can we break through? How do you work with players to get them to get out into the community to talk about whatever issues are important to the team?
Yeah, and Sid, I appreciate you for bringing that up. I saw your posts around that time, and it, you know, the awareness that landed on me when I saw that, I was like, wow, that is a big realization that is how things have played out with that promotion. I think, you know, it's starting the conversations. finding a way for the players to figure out how they can be involved. We this year for National Coming Out Day, which falls in October, the NFL put together a video PSA that went out on Sunday during the games that weekend in October, and they came to us and asked if we would have any active players that would be willing to get on camera and say, "I've got you." Like, if you're in my locker room right now and you want to come out, I'm here for you. And so we had 2 veteran players. We had Anthony Barr, Anthony Harris say, as soon as we floated the idea, they're like, yes, I'm in. I want to deliver that message. I want it to be visible. I want my teammates and just anyone else in the NFL to know that I'm here. So that was a great way, I think, to start the conversation and let them know that they do have a role in this cause specifically. Always looking to see more, for sure.
Tony, how can we reach more veterans or people who retired, or who knows, any players who will lend their voices to this? Because yes, absolutely. When Billy, dealt with a broadcaster in Cincinnati this year who used a slur, and some players stepped up, and that was great. But it is so hard to find athletes and former athletes who will say, I'm going to embrace this cause and I'm going to start talking about this a lot more.
I think it starts with tonight, having open conversations, like we're having now, because I think, and I applaud the Wilf family. So in the off season, I think it was 2 years ago, we took a group of kids, I think it was about 100. We had current players and myself and another player, and we took them to the African American Museum of History in DC. And then we went to the Holocaust Museum. Obviously, their family donated. So you have to continue to open that scope and saying, and like I said, that my cliques, my calls. Yes, some players need to, I think they need to use their voices, because as athletes, we have a tremendous platform. And when you stand up and say, I stand up against this, people listen. And I know I use my voice, but we have to get more players to do that. So I think it starts with education. And you're going to talk to players about how important, it is to respect people who, with the Holocaust, how important it is to go to the African American Museum. It's definitely, everything should be on the table and everything should be talked about, and those doors should be open. So that's me. I think more panels like this, getting those out, it shouldn't just be, a Friday night and then all of a sudden the game kicks off on Sunday and then we never talk about it again until next Super Bowl. We need to continue to have these conversations. We need to continue to have, great individuals like on this panel and it's going to be on this next panel to use their influence, because just our panel alone, like look at our reach. I mean, everyone here, it has some incredible opportunities. And then we just have to continue to keep talking to our coworkers, our neighbors, our friends, and putting the word out and just saying that this is not acceptable, because, we just went through, with the Black Lives Matter. It's a shame that we're still dealing with those same issues in 2020 and 2021. And we're still having, to have conversations like these, but we got to bring them to the forefront and we have to continue to get the message out.
And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, right? And
yep.
Sid, you talked about all the your stories that you tell on outsports.com, all these athletes, right? All the players that you tell their stories. Well, us here need to sort of kind of create an environment, right, for them. So we can't fake the funk that the word faggot and gay and stuff has been haunting us for generations, right? So it always had that negative thing on it. So when a player comes out, one of the reasons why I think that a player doesn't come out, and I've talked to a few, is that when you come out, you put them in that category, right? You put them in that, and everybody knows this stuff. When you put them in that box, right, and you label them as the gay player, all the negative things come with that, right? All the negative comments, all the negative things that happen. So that's why it's so important that we have this conversation. And like Tony said, we need to continue this conversation, not just from today, but moving forward. We need to get in there. We need to do like what Billy Beane has been doing in the MLB. We need to sort of have that face in there so there's always someone there to sort of tell them that what they need to do representing the LGBTQ community.
Or what they can do.
Yes,
I think it's a better way to do it, because it's very interesting. When the visibility, it's interesting, as Sid, about the Cleats for a Cause. When Sean Doolittle of the Washington Nationals, he wore rainbow cleats in the All-Star game, supporting LGBTQ and trans rights that were very, very prevalent that, in DC where he was playing. And he also, when he made the All-Star team in 2017, he wore a One Love shirt for marriage equality with him and his wife. And it was amazing the amount of attention it draws. And I think that, of course, not every athlete is like that, but him and his wife are so engaged and so committed. His wife was raised by two moms, and that had a huge impact on her. Erin Dolan is her name, and she's in her own right, an amazing social media influencer. But one of the things that I've tried to do is stay as far away from semantics or a lecture type conversations. I try to be an example that is relatable and show the players it's a constant evolution of data and process to keep it fresh, because as Tony will tell you, and I'm sure Ann is finding out, world-class athletes have a very short attention span when it comes to anything besides their sport, and you better bring the goods right away, or they're going to be like, what are we doing here? And so finding a bridge of that they can relate to. And it's so interesting. You would think with the Cleats for Cause that, someone in the NFL may have a family member. We saw the NBA, one of the players for the Detroit Pistons, his trans sister was murdered in an act of violence. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, Sid.
Reggie Bullock.
Say again?
Reggie Bullock.
Yes, Reggie Bullock. And I met Reggie at the Pride Parade in New York City in 2019. But the generosity and the courage for him to come forward brought more visibility to something that is an epidemic of proportion of violence against trans women of color, and so it's just amazing the power of influence of our athletes. And our charge is to continue to bring information in front of them that might inspire them to be a part of that process.
A quick question, because I live here in New York City, and I'm just going to ask this and pose this to the panel. But the fact that the NFL had a presence at the Pride Parade, do you think that's a step in the right direction? Because I was proud. I saw it on Instagram. I had a lot of my friends who reached out and was like, "Man, this is absolutely amazing that the NFL would step up," and it was amazing. So do you guys think that is that a step in the right direction as far as trying to, educate others?
Yeah, most definitely. I think I was there, and I was part of that, the Pride Parade. And yeah, for myself, very proud.
Yeah.
Very proud of, never in a million years, I always tell this, never in a million years ever thought, right? I'm from the old school, right? From the old school. So the thought, like walking up just to that, to the float itself, I just started getting so emotional, because not in the million years that I ever thought that something like that would happen. But yes, stuff like that does help, right? It does help. And it sends a message, I think, out to the community that, the NFL is supporting the LGBTQ community. I mean, obviously we have to, like we've talked, we're talking here, we need to sort of kind of continue the conversation to move forward, and not just stop there at the Pride, but we need to continue it and go forward. The thing that hurts me, to tell you the truth, Sid has all these athletes that come out, right? Amazing athletes, right? Amazing athletes. And it's one of those things where I just want to create something for them, right? So they're not judged, right? Or they're not judged of who they decide to give their hearts to, right? They're judged because of their performance on the field. They're judged because of the things that they do for their community, not judged because who they decide they want to love. Right. So that's why this is important. That's why, I'm bringing you guys on here to have this conversation. Right. It does start from the top. It does start, from the administration, whatever. We can start anywhere. Right. As long as we continue the conversation and move forward, because we need to sort of kind of pave the way and create a platform, right? So then sort of kind of eliminate the F word, right? I spoke at the Rookie Symposium back in 2006, right? When Ryan O'Callaghan was a rookie. 300 amazing athletes, one stupid question, right? And the stupid question came from a prominent player that got drafted in the first round. And the question was, if you're a fag and I call you a fag, is that offensive? But I tell you what, I saw change that day, because as much as I wanted to sort of, I saw the crowd, the 299 players that was in that room looking at this guy and saying, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? You just said that to a guy that played 9 years in the NFL, right? And so it was one of those things where I just told him, I don't care if you use the word faggot, queer, or homo. If you use it in a negative term, right, we need to get rid of that language. If you use it in a negative term, it's like calling an African-American the N-word or a woman the B-word. It's not right. It's definitely not right. So that's why, again, I love you guys so much for coming on here and just sharing your stories and continuing the conversation that we need to continue. Right? So
I want to play off of what both of you just said. Tony, one of the neat things about that Pride Parade was it wasn't just New York Pride, it was World Pride Day.
Exactly.
It was the entire world's pride.
Yep.
And I just saw a story out of New Zealand that at Auckland Pride later this month, all of the professional sports leagues in New Zealand are doing the same thing.
Yeah. So
did it have an effect? It had a big effect. The other thing that I think it exemplifies, and this is an argument that I get to all the time with people. I actually think that in most of men's sports, the culture actually doesn't have to change that much in regards to acceptance. That athletes and coaches are very ready to accept their gay and bisexual colleagues and players. And the biggest challenge we have now is to get more people, LGBTQ people, to tell their stories, which we've talked about, and non-LGBTQ people just to talk about the support that they have. And I think that's what the NFL did that day. And I'm curious what just your experiences talking to the retired players, talking to people in the offices, talking to people in current locker rooms. Am I crazy? Is acceptance there, or do we still have a long way to go?
Yeah, so Troy Vincent, who is, directly under Roger, we did an event in Philadelphia, and Troy, he was obviously welcome, and he's really receptive. And so I think, I haven't been in the locker room and really been around a lot of current players. So that's probably a difficult question for me. But in the retired community, here in New York City, I think, like I said, I guess I'm not saying I live in a bubble, because in New York, it's very accepted, and it's really not something that people really have to talk about. Unfortunately, we're still having to deal with race issues all over the world. We still have to deal with these issues all over the world. But New York, it's kind of like, I know if I lived in the South, I went to Auburn and experienced some serious racism there, and then living in a small town in Alabama. My dad was a military man as well, so we traveled the world, and racism really was when I got presented with it when I was in high school. And so yeah, to answer your question, when I talk to former players, or if we're doing different events, it never really becomes a problem, or not even a problem. It never really, it's not something I think guys judge. And I know if I was in the NFL right now and a player openly came out, you know what, because I've been through the racist part of it, I wouldn't have a problem at all, because I really believe in acceptance, and you're my brother, you're my sister, and we're going to go to work, and we're going to go out here and try to win this football game. So Ezra, you might have to touch on that from the current player, or even Ann, as far as in the locker room.
I think, Sid, thank you for bringing that question, because I think often the locker room gets underestimated for quote unquote what it can handle, or for lack of a better way to explain that. I've seen the same thing with women in the locker room, right? Like, well, I've been in the league, I've been with the Vikings since 2006. When I came in, Tony, you were on the roster that season, my first year. And, I've seen a remarkable change from, even the messaging I got, and I was working in football ops, about whether or not, when I could go downstairs to the players' workout area or not, or, and there was never really a clear explanation about the why. It was almost just this sort of intangible concept. And and for me, you know, I'm fine with anyone saying anything as long as they can back it up with a clear logical explanation for why or why not. And that's one I was never quite able to get. And I think my gut is that if you ask the players, they don't care if I run down there to talk to the strength coach about who attended workouts and who, you know, all that stuff. That's not going to bother them. So it was kind of that fuzzy issue. And so I feel the same way, that the players, by and large, would embrace it, but I agree they need to be vocal.
I think, Anna, it's a great point about the leadership, ownership, general manager needs to create that infrastructure that allows the players to know that Doepner might be coming in here after the game to check on and do her job. And just like if there's an out LGBTQ employee or the type of, you know, the community of reporters, you know, being in front of those conversations is how that culture changes. If someone has never been introduced to you, you could save so much drama if they just put a picture of all the ops people in the front office to the team in one meeting and say, these are the people that will be coming through. They work with you. They're all trying to win a Super Bowl. Treat everyone with respect, you know, whatever. And it's just a little bit of like foresight, you know, as opposed to hoping for the best. And if you're, you know, just the rich white guy who works in the front office or has been there, he's never the subject of bias or discrimination or jokes. So he doesn't have to worry about it. And leadership that is comprehensive and is always thinking about advancing equality, because that creates a diverse environment, and a more diverse environment leads to the opportunity to have a more inclusive environment. And when you have a more inclusive environment, you have all the life perspectives. I really want to say, I know we're running out of time here, but I have a feeling, a strong feeling that the shift that we have seen in social justice awareness after George Floyd's murder in May is going to really continue to let players, without fear or to be their best self or champion the things that matter to them. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to provide them a broader platform, more resources, more information, and consistent support for that messaging. And then, Sid, I know that we've been at it for a long time, and you know, there's a sense that somewhere there's a disconnect. But I think something happened this year. And I can tell you, you know, with MLB's expansion of you know, truly wanting to be a part of the solution with the Players Alliance that we created, and my talks with them, and the integration of wanting to support all issues, you know, getting rid of sexism in sports, obviously paying attention to systemic racism where it exists everywhere, and then opportunities for LGBTQ acceptance, support, and respect, and you know, more work opportunities for all three down the road.
Yeah, Billy, you made a great point, and you hit some perfect words, but the word respect. And I think that's where it starts, where you say, you know what, respect each other. You know, respect if you have a Caucasian offensive lineman, respect if you have an African-American center, respect if you have an openly out person, a teammate who's a defensive back. That's where it starts. And that's a key word is respect. And if our society, our country, our sports teams learn to respect each other, because you don't say certain words, you know, you won't call me the N word if you respect me. I won't call you the F word if I respect you. I'm not going to call a lady a B word if I respect that person. So that should be, we always look up words that you would love to have on when you come in the locker room, you know, win, championship. Hey, how about the biggest word should be respect? And I think if we can respect one another, we can understand that, you know, I don't have to agree with it, but if I respect it, we're not going to have any issues. So Billy, I think that's a great point.
And it's like stories, the players that you played with, have gone to battle with, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, the respect that you get from them, right? And then when the crazy thing is that when you share like when you sort of like share who you truly are, right? Then like that, you know, if I came out as being gay and stuff, then it's sort of like this, the shift just changes, right? But if you just had that respect, right, like how you just was telling me, I think that would be great. And then what also I wanted to sort of add on with Ann and what Billy was saying, every single year we have a meeting, right? When the new players come in, right? In the beginning of the season, all the coaches come in, everyone, and you talk about respect for the team. You talk about respect for women. You talk about, you know, the FBI comes in, tells you things that you shouldn't do, you should do, all of that. You know, in Minnesota, you can't gawk at a woman because if you do, that's against, you know, it's sort of one of those things. Why don't you just throw in, and I'm not going to tolerate the word faggot, queer, or homo in my locker room. Period. Right? Because then now the players see somebody, the head coach saying something like that, or even somebody, general manager can also say that, right? And that's, I think, will create that respect, right? That will create like a different environment within the locker room, because if then somebody says the word, right? Then it's like somebody can sort of step up and say, you know what, dude, it's not tolerated in this locker room. Right. So I think it's sort of, you know, we're talking about all the same things and stuff like that. And it's incredible. So.
Well, circling back, just to kind of recap some of the things that we talked about, you know, this continuing changing of culture, because I think we've all acknowledged that there's been a lot of change over the last, certainly since Billy played, but it takes sustained effort. And it's simultaneously, it's one day at a time. You just got to keep doing it over and over again. Storytelling by LGBTQ people. Tony, you talk about the impact that Ryan O'Callahan sharing his story had on you. And then on the flip side, if you're not LGBTQ, being vocal about your support and your respect and your acceptance of your teammates. And then finally, you know, trying to work with team leaders, whether it's the coaches or captains, to make team rules really clear. You can't use this kind of language. You can't do this. You can't do that. And modeling that for your team. Those are my big takeaways from this conversation. Anything else that you guys want to add?
You know, I think you can learn something. And, you know, Billy, you sort of kind of, you know, you're talking about the difference between lecturing, right? But I have to, you know, me being the old player, right? Me being the old player from the old school and seeing all that negative, it's sometimes hard to adjust and it's sometimes hard to change. But by you just saying that, it sort of kind of put a light bulb in my head. You're right? You're definitely right. Instead of lecturing, what we need to do is get in there and just, you know, sort of like work together, right? Work together to try to create something. And so, and you're right. And I, you know, maybe I had that little bad, you know, because of all the stuff, because every single day I woke up in the morning and stuff. And as soon as I walked into that locker room, I transformed myself into somebody I wasn't, a straight guy. Right. So then I have all of that all built up. But conversations like this helps me to sort of like just open up and you know, and be open to sort of like working together and moving forward. So
there's so many different ways that we can be impactful. And Esera, you don't need to apologize for, you know, that was a dynamic moment for you to walk in front of all those players in 2006 for the first time. Believe me, there was times I felt like I was going to throw up. I was so nervous because the players can be intimidating. And I wanted them to, I went back to being that baseball player, and I wanted them to respect me for my baseball ability, not, you know, for the reason that I was there to talk to them about. But there's been some great examples. The New York Yankees and the Mets, the Yankees the last 4 years have had me dress out in spring training, throw batting practice, shag fly balls, you know, just spend a little time. Aaron Judge was, you know, I had a long conversation in right field with him last year, and it was all over Twitter. You know, he's just a great kid who's, you know, very secure and knows that a positive moment like that could affect millions of kids in recess in grade school across the country. You know, Sandy Alderson, New York Mets, you know, had me dress out, throw batting practice, help the outfield coaches, you know, for a couple days. There's all different ways to find a connection. And if we work in organizations or we do have the chance to intersect, we have to realize that we need to bring some of those solutions and not expect people to do it for us. And that's why I have great empathy. I want that first athlete that, you know, wants to come out, you know, or the next athlete. I want their experience to be positive. And I want, like you said, I want them to continue to be judged for what they do between those lines on the football field or on the basketball court or a baseball field, and not torched by a tiny sliver of people that are just looking to hate on other people or jealous because they're not in the major leagues or the NFL or the NBA. So that is where, you know, creating an environment where your teammates will have their back for you and say, you know, if someone in my clubhouse used the N-word, I would jump on that guy in 2 seconds, you know, because that's talking about someone that I love and care about. And if someone called me the F word behind my back, I would hope that they would want to be there for me. You know, it's no different than if someone said something nasty to my mother or my father or my family or a friend or my partner. You know what I mean? It's creating an environment where there's a sense of respect. And as we all know, there's no stronger feeling than that bond when you're in those trenches together and you know that person, it makes me emotional, you know, because it's so fleeting. And Tony, I know you miss it like I miss it. You know, you play in the NFL a long time, man. Those relationships are intense because you guys put it out there. I seen you limping from your 25 years ago, you know, from playing. You know, you put it out there, and you still can do push-ups with your couch on your back or whatever you put on your Facebook page.
I hear. You played like a flag football game developing here.
You know what? I'm into it.
But I want to, before we have to close because I know we're close on time and stuff. I want to tell people the Super Bowl story, my Super Bowl story, 1998, right? So everybody, I just want to put yourself in my position, right? So sitting in the lobby, watching all the players' families come in, introducing to the players and the coaches, hugging, whatever, and then my partner comes in and we have to do the secret of meeting in the dark, you know. So it's one of those things where that's memories I can't come get back, right? That's why we need to change this, right? We need to sort of like move forward. So then that one player that is part of the LGBTQ, the gay player can invite his family, his boyfriend, whoever, right? And introduce them to the players and the coaches. Because I tell you what, that day hurt me a lot because I helped that team get to the Super Bowl. And then the fact of the matter that I couldn't like share or introduce them to my partner, that's hurt, or my family or my in-laws. And that's my Super Bowl part, my Super Bowl story I wanted to. So I just, I just wanted to share that because I want people to understand, right? What, the things that we went through. It's definitely changing. Don't get me wrong. It's changing. And I'm loving the conversations and I'm loving the stories that are coming out. And as people come out and live in their truth, it'll just get better. It will just get better along with these conversations that we have.
It's getting better. Just keep talking, sharing stories. Billy and Tony, thank you so much for joining. Esera, thank you for hosting. And Anne, as one of the sponsors, last parting words for us.
I am so humbled to be with all three of you today and the work that you are doing. I mean, it is a burden that you carry for the people coming behind you. I mean, you are doing the work that is going to make this easier. And I've taken away so much from all of you because I take my job seriously, that I hope that what I'm doing and what we're doing at the Vikings is creating that environment where someone is going to feel comfortable coming out and sharing that story and knowing that they're fully supported by everyone in the organization. So that is our goal. So we're so indebted to you for starting the conversation. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And again, everybody watching, we're going to be back in just a few minutes at 9 p.m. Eastern with the second panel. Again, panelists, thank you so much for joining, and we'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, Ann and Tony.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great to see you guys.
God bless. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Hey, aloha! I hope you guys enjoyed the first part of the panel discussion. And as they get ready for the second part, they called me in because we needed a filler. Yeah, we needed somebody to entertain you while they switch over the panelists. So I'm gonna sing a song for you. And this is a sing-along. So if you wanna sing, please sing out loud, because you know why? I won't hear you, and that's okay, right? So, all right, hope you guys enjoyed this. And again, thank you for joining us at our second annual Hate is Wrong Inclusion Panel. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. So please don't take my sunshine away. The other night, dear, as I was sleeping, I dreamt I held you in my arms. And as I woke in, I was mistaken. So I just held my head down and cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when the skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. So please don't take my sunshine away. Aloha. Great job, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us on this year's panel. But also, I want to invite you to take the Hate is Wrong pledge. And this is how it goes. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what is right. Thank you. So if you feel like taking a pledge, please do film it, and then you can upload it to our Hate is Wrong Facebook page, and so we can post it, and you can be part of the solution. All right, now check out some of my other friends that have taken the pledge. You guys enjoy the second part of the panel.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Reeve, head coach and general manager of the Minnesota Lynx. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what's right.
Hi, I'm Billy Bean, former Major League Baseball player, Vice President, and Special Assistant to the Commissioner of MLB. Let's take the pledge as we move into the future. Hate in any form is wrong.
Hey y'all, I'm country music artist Dave McElroy, and I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I'm going to continue to do the right thing. And I know my boy Johnny Cash here, he would have felt the same way.
Hi everyone, this is Carley Knox, Vice President for the Minnesota Lynx. I believe that hate is wrong in any form and will continue to do what is right.
Yo, what's up family? My name is Siausi. I am a island reggae recording artist, and I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what's right. Aloha.
Hi, my name is Darcy Bauman. I hope you'll join me in taking the Hate is Wrong pledge, because I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what is right.
Hi, my name is Micah Porter, high school educator and LGBTQ+ sports advocate. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and starting now, I will do what's right. Thank you.
Mighty Paul here, the director of Color Talks. Hate in any form is wrong. I pledge to continue to do what is right. Love one another.
Hi, I'm Lori Lean, fitness champion pro and host. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what's right.
Aloha, this is Wayne Cueto, the founder of Hawaii Sports Fans. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what's right.
Hi, I'm Nafisa Collier, a forward for the Minnesota Lynx. I believe that hate is wrong in any form, and I will continue to do what is right.
Hi, my name is Brandon Rader. I am a matchmaker and lifestyle consultant, and I believe that hate in any form is wrong. And starting now, I will do what's right.
Hi, I'm Kirk Walker from UCLA Softball and Sports Equality Foundation. I believe hate in any form is wrong, and starting now, I will do what's right.
My name is Selena Martier. I'm a State Farm agent in Minneapolis. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what is right.
I'm Sven Sungard. And I'm Robbie McCachran. And we believe that hate in any form is wrong. And we will continue to do what's right.
Hello and welcome to our second Hate is Wrong inclusion panel. Sorry we had a few minutes of waiting for the second one, but I'm here with 4 amazing panelists to talk about harnessing the power of sports to bring social change. With me tonight, again, from Minneapolis, seems like almost everyone we're talking to is from Minneapolis, which is obviously amazing. Andrea Jenkins, Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council and the first Black openly trans woman elected to public office in the United States. That's pretty impressive. Carley Knox, Vice President with the Minnesota Lynx, all the way from Oregon, is Barbara Roberts, who was the former governor of Oregon and was the first woman governor of Oregon. And finally, Bonnie Thurston, who's the WNBA's player programs and oversees WNBA's player programs and is founder and co-chair of the NBA Pride Employee Resource Group. Welcome, everybody. Bonnie, I want to start with you. A lot has been written about the willingness of WNBA and its players to take political and social stands. And obviously, it's been at the fore this year, but this has been going on for a long time for anybody who was really paying attention to what was going on in the league. What is it about the WNBA that's fostered that kind of environment?
Well, thank you, Sid. First, I just want to thank you for having me and also thank the other panelists for joining me in this powerful conversation. We got to chat a little bit beforehand and I'm excited about this evening. The WNBA has championed inclusion from the beginning, from its inception. And we have players who are not afraid to put their money where their mouth is. And we fully support them as a league. Our players union also fully supports the players using their voices and, fighting against racial injustices in particular, and any kind of societal wrong. What is it that creates that environment? It stems from the players. It always has.
So the players have, for years have just said, we're going to take these stands, and the league has simply kind of gotten out of the way and said, go for it.
I mean, I think the players have our support, which I think it was very evident in the 2020 season. We had a really unique opportunity for all of our players to be in one place and to collectively decide that they were going to use their voices to speak out. You saw we had Black Lives Matter on our court. We had players wearing Breonna Taylor's name on their jersey. We partnered with the Say Her Name campaign, which was founded by the African American Policy Forum, led by the amazing Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. Our players are behind all of that, and we are in full support.
Carley, from a team perspective, what is your relationship with the players in figuring out what the team is going to get behind and how the team is going to support the players and what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're all in lockstep and we're part of this bigger movement of using sport as a vehicle of change. So I think it starts with our players and the support of our coaches, the support of our staff, and the support of our fans. And it's a beautiful thing to see the inclusivity when you come to a WNBA game and see all the different types of people. And like Bonnie said, from the inception of the WNBA, we've been fighting for all marginalized groups and even our very opportunity to have a league and to be able to play. So, it's at the core of our values and who we are, that it's so much more than basketball and the impact that we make on society, not just by winning championships and, winning these rings. It's about the bigger impact that we have in society and that we truly are thought leaders for our communities. And like Bonnie said, put our money where our mouths are, and that it is about the full player, the full person. It's not just about the basketball, which makes me really proud. And being down in the Wubble firsthand in the WNBA season this past year was an incredible thing to witness, all the players coming together. And I've been in this league for 17 years, and I met Bonnie very early on, and just makes me love our players and all of the players in the league that much more, watching them come together and respond to what was happening in society, to the latest shootings that had happened, to impacting our election and, the call for people to vote and take action, and the impact directly in the Georgia election. Like, it gives me the chills. It reminds me why I do what I do. And it's really like the purpose behind what drives me every single day and why I've committed so much of my career to the WNBA.
And if I can just add a little bit to what Carley's saying, absolutely, being in lockstep was critical. We created this initiative called the Justice Movement with the Players Union. We stood up a social justice council with some remarkable advisors, including Alicia Garza, Raquel Willis, some really important thought leaders who could help our players become educated on issues that were really important to them. And just like Carley, I'm incredibly proud, and it gives me chills too, to think about the things that our players were able to do because they wanted to do them and they were important to them.
Andrea, you're in Minneapolis. You were, I don't love the term ground zero, but what the United States experienced over the last 8-10 months in regards to social awareness really started in your city. As you were, experiencing what you were experiencing, was what the WNBA and other athletes were doing, were you aware of that? And what was your feeling about what you were seeing?
I'm going to just start by saying thank you for having me here, and so honored to be a part of such an august panel. Bonnie, you dropped two names of dear friends of mine, Alicia Garza and Raquel Willis. I mean, we text each other, like those are my homies. So it's just really an honor to be here with you all. And yeah, Sid, you named it. We were talking about this earlier on the call. It's not only in my city, my neighborhood is ground zero. I look out the window and I see a big, huge, 30-foot mural of George Floyd because he was murdered right 2 blocks from my home in the district that I represent. So I'm just really, impacted as a resident of Minneapolis, as a neighbor, but also as the city council member, who is being challenged to deal with, a lot of the repercussions of that issue. As you know, George Floyd was a tremendous athlete, and many professional athletes came to his, sort of, I guess you'd say his family side after he was murdered, and really brought attention to the issue. NBA standout, I think, all-star players. Steven Jackson was best friends with George Floyd, and apparently they called themselves twins because they looked alike. So, the NBA was very active, and the WNBA, and yes, I was very much aware of the protests. the activism that was happening at the WNBA level, in the NBA, in tennis. I mean, Naomi Osaka was wearing, Breonna Taylor mask and George Floyd mask. So very much aware, very much in tune. And I really absolutely believe that athletes using their voices in these ways has dramatically changed the conversation. And, it goes back to Colin Kaepernick, right? So it's just an important, and even beyond that, but Colin Kaepernick is probably, I think, one of the most recent athletes that we can think about. It was very impactful at the time, and I think still plays an important role in bringing awareness and attention to the very real racial challenges that we have in our society.
Sports has a long history advocating for social justice. Various athletes, Jesse Owens running in the 1936 Olympic Games and winning gold in front of Hitler in Berlin. You have, again, the Olympics, 1968, the black, Tommy Smith and, oh God, I'm embarrassed that you guys did.
I know.
Anyhow, the two athletes.
I was a little young at the time, so I'm just going to give myself a break.
So there's a long history, and Barbara, you have a long history of fighting for equality. You were the first woman governor of Oregon. And I'm curious, as you've looked at what's gone on in sports over the last year and the advocacy that we've seen from sports, what has been your impression?
Well, I've had several things that come to mind quickly. And because the Trailblazers NBA team plays in my city of Portland, it was amazing to watch Lillard and a number of the stars off of that team marching during the Black Lives Matter period of time. And we had our share, like of many other cities, of riots and difficulty. But to watch that leader in the basketball world take that leadership to the social world, and it made a huge difference in our city in terms of how people reacted, I think. The other thing, kind of unusual for me, almost different than anything that's been talked about yet tonight, but I've been very active with Special Olympics for a long time. And that's a group of people, if you think of their disabilities, who never got to play sports. And then finally Special Olympics started and they could run and swim and play basketball and football. And they played among their own people with disabilities. And the most recent thing that happened about 2 years ago, and I think it's happening in a number of cities now in the country, is high school teams composed of athletes who have disabilities, and part of the same team are kids who don't have those challenges. And they play together at the high school level, and it is just an amazing thing to watch. The kids with the disabilities become better athletes, there's no question, and I understand from teachers, better students too. But the other part of it is that the so-called normal kids, the kids who don't have that challenge of a disability, they're more loving, they're more caring, they're more sensitive, they're more inclusive. And these teams are a team. There's no question that they're a team. And the fact that they're made up of a kind of a diverse kind of kids, but out of it, there are 1,000 stories that we can tell you about what a difference it made in the lives of both sets of athletes. And so I'm a firm believer, and when women were starting to play professional basketball, I'm such a Blazer nut, but such a basketball nut too, I was so excited because it was so much fun to watch them play. so exciting, and they were so talented and so strong and so tough. And it changed people's view of women athletes. We've seen it in tennis, we've seen it in track, and sometimes in swimming, but we had not seen it in a sort of major competitive sport that we were used to seeing men play only. And I think that changed a lot of lives, and it changed, more importantly, a lot of attitudes about women in sports. So I feel very lucky to have watched this from a number of angles. I have a son who is autistic. He's not athletic, but he can talk to you about soccer in every country of the world. He can talk to you about basketball, football, you name it. He knows it all. And so for him, this is how he brought sports into his life, though he wasn't very physically talented. So I've got to watch changes in people, both in their sports ability, their athletic abilities, but also in their attitudes. And I think in the end, that's what we're really working for.
Well, this is one of the beauties of sports, is that it brings us together, and it opens our eyes to other kinds of people. But over the last, I would say 5 to 10 years in particular, there has developed in this country this attitude that just shut up and dribble. If you're an athlete, you shut your mouth, get off of Twitter, stay out of politics, go play your sport. And we saw the NFL suffer in ratings after Colin Kaepernick knelt for the national anthem. We've seen fans tune out from those things. And I'm curious, from all of your perspectives, how do we combat that notion to make sure that athletes, we're not telling them to shut up and dribble, that they feel empowered to have their say in society too?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. So we absolutely empower our athletes, empower our coaches, and our fans embrace that, and they share those same values. And those that don't usually naturally and authentically find their ways out, rather than continuing to be season ticket members. But in 2016, after there's a series of shooting, including one that happened here in Minnesota, and some police brutality incidences, we were the first team in all of pro sports, men's, women's, what have you, including college sports, to stand up and take a stand. And we had a press conference before one of our games, and we wore shirts that said "Change starts with us," and it had a Black Lives Matter logo. This is in 2016, and it had a Dallas police logo because of the officers that were murdered as well in Dallas. And at a press conference talking about how important it was for us to have these discussions and bring people together and be a little uncomfortable so that we can help make the world a better place. And I was so incredibly proud of our players and proud of our franchise for standing up. And in fact, a number of the off-duty police officers that were working in the game walked out that day. Don't worry, we were safe. The fans were safe. We had a good plan in place. But I was so proud that we paved the way. And then shortly after that, there were a number of other WNBA teams that did a number of protests, some NBA teams, so on and so forth. But our players are incredibly inspiring. They are absolutely amazing, and they inspire our fan base. And I took a number of calls, including death threats and people saying they didn't want to be season ticket holders anymore. Well, those people didn't fit our values, but the majority of our fans do fit our values, and we're so incredibly proud of us for the way that we took a stand. So absolutely, we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep using our voices and our platforms to make the world a better place and use sport as a vehicle of change.
Well, Sid, I was thinking with those remarks that she just made and the comment you made earlier about shut up and dribble, the truth is our players, all of them, for all sports, in all genders, in all ability levels, they are citizens. And there is nothing that excuses taking the citizenship rights of voice away from those players. And some people may disagree. I do politics, disagreement's part of my world. But the truth is, we cannot forget that they are citizens. And every time we make a good decision by doing that press conference, by putting on those shirts front and back, and the message is clear, it makes a difference for the whole world. Never say that everybody likes it, but it begins to impact all kinds of people in the culture who never thought about it that way before. And I was saying to Sid on the phone the other day, one of the things that struck me is during this past political week, when Pete was Mayor Pete, I always want to call him, but when he became the Secretary of Transportation and he was being interviewed on some news show, and they asked him something, and he said, well, my husband and I just wanted to kiss him because he made it what it is, normal. He's a citizen, and that is normal for him. And that is, I think that's the thing that people want everybody in a little box. Our citizens don't belong in that little box, nor do our athletes.
For some reason, Sid, when you asked that question, I thought about Cordell Stewart, who played in the NFL and was a really standout player. And I just read this article last night, that essay actually that he wrote. And you know, there was a rumor that he was gay, and how it impacted his career. And you know, I mean, he didn't get kicked out of the league, but he, after that, you know, sort of that allegation happened, you know, prospects changed for him. I mean, a lot of endorsements. I mean, he was what do you call it? He never made it to the Hall of Fame. People say it's because he was a quarterback and not a wide receiver. But, you know, be that as it may, he did win lots of championships, or at least a championship. And, you know, and was a very good quarterback, but didn't get the kinds of accolades that other players got because of that rumor. And, you know, in his essay, he talked about how he, you know, played into all the stereotypes of, you know, homophobic kinds of remarks, you know, and he attributed it to a sign of the times, which, you know, certainly I agree that it probably was really difficult to talk about, even if you weren't gay, to talk about this subject in a way that is respectful, right? And really change the paradigm. And so, you know, I think it's just really important to have conversations like this, where we can begin to understand that people of all genders, all gender identities, all sexual identities, you know, are a part of everyday life. They can be the Secretary of Transportation. They can be on the Minneapolis City Council. They can be governors of states, and they can be, you know, world-class athletes, and do their jobs well, and be the kinds of, I think, inspiration for others to live their lives openly and authentically. And Bonnie, I know you wanted to say something, so please jump in.
Thanks, Councilwoman. I think those are all really great points. And Governor, I really liked what you said about people being citizens, all of these athletes being citizens. And I think the WNBA players demonstrated just how seriously they take their citizenship by really putting on a clinic in civics engagement this past year. And I know it was really, as Carley said before, it was really it's kind of humbling to watch, and also just makes you really, really proud to work with them. But I think one of the things that we really set out to do over the summer, and that the players set out to do with the Social Justice Council, was spend time educating themselves on the issues, and then working to kind of amplify voices, and then mobilizing. So a lot of what this past season was spent doing was really, really digging deep into the education. And we held a lot of powerful conversations, and with some of those names I mentioned before, and also people like, you know, Sandra Bland's sister, Breonna Taylor's mom. There were some really powerful conversations that, quite frankly, I was often moved to tears and felt like I shouldn't have even been a fly on the wall there. They were really intense and powerful, and they helped move players beyond just the education point, but really toward the mobilization even more, like getting to know people who are directly impacted. And I'm thinking now of you, Councilwoman, and just how close all of the activities were around George Floyd's death, and him, you know, this happening two blocks away from your home. It's just, it's pretty incredible stuff.
This week leading up to this conversation, Barbara called me very concerned because she didn't think she would have anything to add to this conversation. And I have to tell you that the way you talked about athletes being citizens, so patriotic and so American and so beautiful, I teared up. So, and I've never heard somebody frame it that way, you know, and a lot of the people who have trouble with athletes speaking up, I think that message of being an American and patriotism, I asked how to get through, and that really resonated with me. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
You know, so we've talked about what's gone on over the last year. I want to look ahead now, because from my perspective, running out sports, one of the great civil rights struggles that we have ahead is for trans Americans. And some of the trans Americans who are most under fire right now happen to be trans athletes. People wanting to ban all trans athletes from women's sports in particular. And I'm curious, start with you, Andrea. How do you see, in an ideal world, the role of professional sports playing in this conversation and harnessing that energy and focusing it now a bit on helping our fellow trans Americans?
Oh boy, what a great question. You know, it is this issue around transgender athletes is so disheartening, because many of the athletes that people are really trying to stifle and just sort of delegitimize are young athletes. They're kids. They're playing kids sports, and they're being vilified and victimized in state legislatures. I mean, you watch some of these hearings at the legislature, and it's just heartbreaking to be in those rooms and listen to how people are talking about these young kids. And you know, the issues, we know that when young people are able to compete, that they thrive, that they do better at school, they do better in social situations, and consequently, when they're denied those opportunities, all of those things, you know, have less than positive outcomes. And so, you know, I just really struggle with the idea of really trying to harm these young people. And it's why I sit on the board of the Human Rights Campaign and our trans justice initiative that really is working to bring some level of sanity to that debate. Also sit on the board of the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, which works on legal cases. And so the Bostock decision that just came down from the Supreme Court actually does provide some kinds of accessibility for trans athletes. And I think the Biden administration has issued some executive orders, but we need more than just executive orders. We need to really pass the Equality Act that brings justice and equality to trans and gender nonconforming people and to all LGBT people all throughout the country in access to housing, access to medical treatment, access to employment opportunities, and access to being able to play sports in schools and to use the restrooms that most associate with your gender identity. And so it's really sad. I mean, we saw, some of Renee Richards in tennis, Renee was a world-class athlete, and it didn't matter the gender. They were able to compete at a high level, and I think trans and gender nonconforming people should be able to do that. I'm an athlete myself. I just love sports. Not a great athlete, but when I compete, I had that that fire and just that love of just being a part of a team when I played team sports and as an individual athlete, as a tennis player, or even just a runner competing against myself. And people should have that opportunity to benefit. It builds your confidence. It certainly helps to keep us healthier anyway. And it's sad that that those things are a reality. But I think things are changing. We see women coaching in the NFL, in the NBA, and other professional sports, transcending gender. I think there's even some women playing professional football in the NFL now. And so, the ball is moving. It's slow, but we will get there.
And I'll just add, in the WNBA, we pride ourselves on inclusivity, and that includes all athletes that identify as women. And, Lasia Clareton has been so amazing. She plays for New York, and it's been wonderful getting to know her through USA basketball events that I've been at. And she's been phenomenal in leading this charge. She identifies as trans, and just leading the charge for the WNBA and being part of our activism amongst our players and making sure that this remains a top priority for the WNBA as well. Bonnie, I know that you're heavily involved and working on that as well.
What's her name, Carley?
Lasia Clareton.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bonnie, I'm curious, beyond supporting players like Lasia and having an inclusive policy, is the WNBA talking about how to throw its weight behind this conversation? Because this conversation is heating up really fast.
Yeah, it's definitely a very hot topic, as you've referenced. I think for the WNBA, what's important to us is to lead by example. I think you'll see we're doing that. We're a very, very inclusive league. And as Carley mentioned, Lasia's story last week, our commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, made a very supportive statement, and that's where we are. We support our players, and we will continue to lead by example.
Barbara, I'm curious what you would, on an issue like this, we've seen leagues and teams lead on racial issues and sexual orientation and this trans inclusion in America it is going to be the number one social issue over the next 1-2 years. What would you like to see teams and leagues and other sports entities do to step up?
Well, let me say first, when Andrea said she was on the Human Rights Campaign Board, I was on that board for 6 years, and I was there the day that we sat at a board meeting with the first discussion about fitting trans into the broad family of LGBT. And so when Andrea said, we've come a long way, and we know we have a long way yet to go. And I would take that information and say, we probably aren't going to get the whole loaf of bread at one time, but we can get as many slices as possible. So if we quit talking about restrooms and locker rooms and start talking about athletes and athletics and skills and citizenship, the whole broad base, I think that's our problem. We get a lot of the people who are against trans being in sports, they always start talking about the locker room and the restroom. It's like women in the military. It's an old conversation. So it's how they think about making somebody not be in a setting they don't think they deserve or belong. So we've got to be clear as leaders in the sports world, all sports, that the identification of the athlete is theirs. Their gender identification is really theirs. And so we must take it from there and say, this is a female or a male athlete or whatever. But it's not ours to decide. It's theirs to decide. And it takes a lot of very brave people to make those decisions, just like the early gay athletes. It's a very hard thing to do, and we need to make it easier. And so at school board meetings and high school teams and college teams, professional teams, we need to be the ones who are there speaking out about, this is great, this is fine, this is inclusive, this is America. And I just feel so strongly that anytime you try to discriminate against someone, if you insert the word African American, or you insert the word Jew, or you insert the word woman, or anything else, if it wouldn't fit there, it won't fit here.
Sid, did you say that the governor was not sure she'd have anything to add to this conversation?
I am nominating myself to chair the Barbara Roberts for President 2024.
I will.
Line us up.
I have a partner who just left the room, maybe permanently.
Sid, I was going to add one thing to what Barbara said, the importance of respecting people's pronouns, and that it might push us outside our comfort zone, but we need to educate ourselves and respect people and how they identify, they, them, he, she, what have you. Like, we need to recognize and ask people, how do they want to be referred to? So I think that's something really, really important that as a society, we need to be intentional about.
And, I would just say this around the trans athlete, because a lot of, people do talk about the bathroom issue and the locker room and all of that. But they also try to make it seem like people are becoming transgender so that they can have some kind of competitive advantage. And let me assure you that nobody in their right mind would choose to be transgender solely to gain some kind of competitive athletic advantage. I mean, your athletic career only lasts so long anyway, and but being transgender is a lifetime. And so that the idea that that is something that people pursue to become, you know, a champion in their sports. I mean, you know, I think about, what is it, Samaya Caster in South Africa, the world famous sprinter. You know, she had that advantage. She had but she doesn't identify as a transgender person. Like, that is not who she is. And consequently, trans people who are in fact trans and happen to be great athletes, you know, it's just who they are. You know, it is not about trying to become be in a certain way in order to have a competitive advantage. So,
you know, in the previous panel, we talked about the importance of telling stories, of people telling their stories. And as you were talking, Andrea, it hit me the importance of education in this. You know, I hear, yes, this idea that some trans athletes will transition so that they can have some perceived advantage in women's sports, which, as you said, is absurd on its face. Educating people about how absurd that is on its face. Mm-hmm. Educating people about difference between someone being intersex and someone being trans and someone being cis, and making that word cisgender not toxic to some people, because it is for some reason.
Yeah, it's just like referring to somebody as, you know,
straight,
a human being, right? It's just a descriptor.
And you know, there's an opportunity. Not everyone has a Layshia Clarendon in the league, but there is an opportunity for sports leagues and teams to tell more stories and to educate their fans. I'm just curious, like, Carley, what you think of that? Like, what can a team do to help educate their fans more on these issues?
Yeah, there's so many directions I can take that, but you know, in the Lynx, we pride ourselves on, it's not just about the game. We have so many different theme nights that we work in, different inspiring speakers, whether it's, you know, an inspiring women night, you know, we had a Black Lives Matter night, you know, we had a Pride night, for example, and have all these incredible speakers come in and honor various people in the community who are fighting these fights.
I got an award on Pride night.
I gave it to her. I gave it to her.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So, like, we're always committed to, again, fighting for all marginalized groups. But the one thing that really hits home for me is when I'm looking around the arena and I'm seeing the next generation that are being really, you know, exposed to and raised, seeing that, you know, my son, who's 6 years old, won't know a world where a woman can't do exactly what a man can do. And these young boys and girls who are wearing Lynx jerseys, it used to just be about, oh, the WNBA is inspiring girls and women. No, we're inspiring the world, and we're showing the world what's possible. And so when these boys and girls grow up and become the next CEO, president, et cetera, they won't know a world like we've known it. And it gives you hope for future generations. So I think that's like the most important piece of education is teaching these future generations and watching them grow up and flourish and continue to change the world and make it a better place.
I think, you know, it's interesting. A few weeks ago, JoJo Sliwa came out, 17-year-old, really popular with kids, right? And I saw this news and I thought, well, that's kind of a big deal, you know? And I told my 8.5-year-old, and I said, JoJo Sliwa, you know, is gay, and this is great. And she said, what's the big deal? This is a kid who has grown up with two moms, and everyone at school knows she has two moms. Everyone knows she has two moms because that's just what she's grown up with. And that's normal for her. It's normal for her friends. But, you know, my generation, that wasn't normal. So to me, I think that this 17-year-old kid who has, you know, millions and millions of Instagram followers and people that buy her jackets and her, you know, her hair bows, that, you know, all this stuff, all this merch, you know, to me, it seemed like a big deal, but to my kid, it's just, okay, so hope she's happy. Great.
That's great.
When I heard that JoJo came out, I said, who? And
that's what I'm saying right now. Like, who?
Oh no, Andrea.
Dance Mom.
Then I went to her YouTube channel. One video had 1 billion views. And I said, I'm just old. So
that's it.
My kid had the curtains, the bedspread, all of it. She switched over to cats now.
Well, what I like to do in the final minutes of these conversations is recap and reinforce some of the things that we've talked about. I always like people to have takeaways from these conversations and not for them to just, you know, peter out. Some of the things that I heard us talk about was, one, listen to the athletes and they will tell you what they want to say and what's important to them, particularly when they're 20 or 30 or 40 years younger than you are. Two, I mean, Barbara, athletes are citizens, and that message is going to resonate with me. What a great way to frame that conversation and remember that they're Americans too, and they get a voice. Three, and again, Barbara, you talked about the Special Olympics and the power of letting athletes play together, how disabled athletes and able-bodied athletes, when they play together, they just get to know each other and they become more accepting and loving of one another. And then finally, you know, educating fans, telling stories, elevating voices like that of Leja, and other people who can help fans understand. Those are some of my takeaways. I'd love to hear, just quickly, we'll just go down from each of you, any parting thoughts or anything that you want people to take away with. Bonnie, we'll start with you.
Sid, there's not much for me to say that you haven't said. I'm also really kind of thinking a lot about what the governor said about being citizens. That is also resonating with me. And also listening to our athletes and not making them shut up and dribble. I mean, that's been really powerful for me. And it's made them happier. It's made them more committed to what they're doing and to the league. And our citizen athletes and our non-citizen athletes have a lot to say, and we should be listening.
Andrea?
Well, I would add on a little bit to Bonnie's comments and say, listen to Black women. You know, there has, you know, we at the top of our federal administration, there is a Black woman who is sitting in the Vice President's office of the United States. You know, there's a Black woman who helped to deliver Georgia as the defining two senators that gave some level of power to the Democratic Party in the Senate. And so Black women have been really leading the way in this country for many years. It's no coincidence that the first woman on any US currency will be a Black woman. And so, and we know that, you know, even in the WNBA, I mean, the majority of the players in that league are Black women. And so that would be the one thing that I would leave people with. But get involved in your community, vote. When we lift up the voices of the most marginalized people in our community, everybody benefits. And yeah, that would be my party message.
Carley?
For having me, Sid and Esera, and to all of my fellow panelists. It's been an honor. Secondly, just to play off of what Andrea said, I spent a lot of time thinking about the intersectionality of all marginalized groups and that we all need to be in this fight together and lift each other up. And that's truly how we're going to make important change. It's not just about a community that you are a part of. It's about getting uncomfortable, thinking about our own privilege, and how can we all come together to make this world a better place.
Barbara, I had to leave you for last. You're telling us now you're running?
No.
Big announcement.
Don just came back to the room and he's going to drag me away and hide me someplace if he thinks I'm going to run again. No, he's a great supporter, a great fan. So I shouldn't say that. But the truth is, as we talk about this conversation, bottom line, maybe two bottom lines. Respect, first of all, respect for differences in people of all kinds. And second, to learn how to celebrate those differences and not fight against them. And you're right, stories are part of the way to do it. A good storyteller can change a lot of minds. And so change doesn't come in a day or a week. It takes a lot of time, but we need to be patient, respectful, and then celebrate like hell.
And let our athletes speak and use sports to do all of that. Thank you all so very much. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed the game on Sunday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So great to see you all.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you
Great to
for
see
joining
you.
us on our second annual Hate
Great
is
to-
Wrong Super Bowl Inclusion Panel, sponsored by the Minnesota Vikings and the NFL Foundation. Please also go to hateiswrong.org and sign up for our mailing list so we can send you information on future events. Also, take the pledge, the Hate is Wrong pledge. I believe that hate in any form is wrong, and I will continue to do what is right. Subscribe to our YouTube and also to our Facebook pages. And again, thank you so much. May God bless you all. Please stay safe. Aloha.